look at us like, because I had us muted. Look at that. Rookie! Rookie! Can we let's do a redo. Boom.
Well, the audio is not on, so welcome to another episode of the Joe and Doug Show. We're going to talk about voting today, so we're going to skip all that preliminary
you know what?
stuff.
It was so eloquent before,
it was good.
And now this is the raw version.
That's awesome. We were muted, but no, we're going to jump in. We want to talk about voting. We're going to have some fun with Election Day. It is Election Day, and I think for a number of folks out there, we have our opinions, we have our thoughts. Some things we want to go a certain way, some things we want to go another way. I imagine you have your prediction for how you think tonight's going to go. I certainly have my thoughts as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we get into some of the fun stuff, I want to talk a bit about the idea of voting. And for those folks that maybe don't vote, should everyone vote? How do you decide who to vote for? What kind of funnel do you put the different candidates through? Do you have certain tests for that? Does local matter more than national? So I want to touch on some of those things and kind of get into the head of Joe when it comes to voting a little bit and share some thoughts too. So voting, did you vote when you turned 18? Like what did that look like for you? Were your parents take you to the polls and stuff?
I came out of the chute just, hungry to be part of the process. But I'm one of those people that I don't give two shits if you feel like voting or not. I don't think you should be urged to do it. I think it's a really sacred, valuable thing. And for someone to go do it just like willy-nilly, I think it devalues the whole process. If you're not intelligent about it and you didn't show up because you had some passion behind you, I'd say stay home and eat spaghetti.
It's interesting. I have several friends and some family members and stuff that very much them not voting is them voting. It's an intelligent decision on their part. However, frustrated sometimes sometimes people in different families, different friends groups, they can get frustrated because, family members are like, I'm not going to vote because, and you're saying sometimes that's healthy and good part of democracy. Yeah,
but we've got the whole team sport of politics that, you want your team to win. So you want people who don't care to throw a vote because it helps your team out. Screw that. I mean, the result should be a natural symptom of the passion. If you're not inspired to go vote, right? If you couldn't get me to get off my couch, then you deserve my not vote.
Interesting.
Not vote?
Now, and I've heard people say this, and people said it to me, when I was in college, that if you don't vote, don't have a right to complain about the results. Is that fair?
No. I have the right to do whatever I want, and you have no opinion about what I'm doing. You manage because we're all screwed up in our own ways. And until I don't want anybody looking through my doorway until they got themselves straightened out.
Well, but the adage kind of comes from the place like, well, if you didn't participate in the process, should you really have an opinion? Now,
yes.
My response was, well, I pay taxes, so I certainly can have an opinion in that. But there's never been an election where I haven't voted. I registered as a Democrat very early on, despite my dad.
Right.
Because my dad was kind of
rebel. That's the only rebellious thing I've heard that you've ever done.
Only rebellious thing I ever did. But there was a tactical reason for it as well. So growing up in my household, we were very conservative. My dad, I make the joke, he was kind of like growing up with Rush Limbaugh a little bit. It was like listening to him and listening to Rush. I'm like, who am I listening to? When he got into politics, he was very to the right on a lot of things. And so when I went off to college, I remember telling him, I was like, I registered as Democrat. Why would you? He was furious.
Get out!
Yeah, find somewhere else to live. But I genuinely did it to vote against Hillary Clinton in the primary. I was not a Clinton fan, partly probably because of being raised with my dad. He was not a Clinton fan. But I did that just to vote against Hillary Clinton in the primary, and then I've been a registered Republican the rest of my life. Do you tend to vote party line? Have you always been a registered what? And
I switch all over the place. I'm a libertarian, and so I think the political sphere changes. Like what today's Democrats and Republicans, it's all different. Like so, I've never been one or the other. I think one of my first like eye openers was Ross Perot. Like I bought into that dude because he was speaking my language. He wasn't quite as classless as Trump is.
What was your first presidential election?
Oh, that's a good question. It probably, it was
96?
probably right down there. I turned 18. Yeah, 96 would have been my
96.
first.
So my first presidential election was 2004. So I voted for George W. In that, and he was a nice guy from Texas. He always seemed nice. The media hates whoever's on the right. It doesn't matter. Mitt Romney was pretty much a choir boy, and they made him out to be like a misogynist, racist, and everything else. And it's like, so you just stop listening to them at some point.
And you know what? Honestly, there's going to be one day where they need to tell the story about that. But since they cast every single,
you cry wolf too many times. Exactly.
I wouldn't even listen because it's just part of the narrative. The 2024 candidate is already misogynist and racist.
Right.
And all that
We
kind
don't
of
even know
stuff.
who they are.
That's exactly. They've had signs made already.
Yeah. It'll be Nikki Haley, who's like a minority, woman. They'll still go with it. She just hates herself, but it doesn't make any sense. But in this election, obviously, it's all been very contentious. Do you think the national election is as important as local elections, or are they both important for different reasons?
Man, that's a tough question because I think local is way more important as it applies to your life. I think you're less, but I think honestly as government starts overreaching, then national does start to affect you. So it's getting close to needing to care about both of them because of the implications if one party gets elected or the other. Yeah,
because the adage is all politics is local.
Yeah.
And I think we've had some good candidates here on a local level. We've had some good candidates here in Ohio. I'm excited at some of the down ballot races that we got to vote in today, just to see kind of how that's going to break. And that gives you a glimpse into your community too. Like when you see how, some of the local races, you don't necessarily get to see how your community voted for the president per se. But that like when this person gets sent to the Ohio State House or elected to the school board or whatever, you kind of get to see the bent of your community, and it gives you I think a deeper glimpse into their philosophy, thought process, etc. Where the nation may be polarized on the coasts and the center of the country and the South. In your community, it kind of, I don't know. I think that's kind of nice in that way. How would you like to live in a state that no matter what you vote, you have a chance in hell in affecting anything? Like, would you bow out of the process? Or would you that was my entire life. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Yeah, okay. Yeah, being a Republican in New Jersey. And you still voted every election. Yep. Yeah, my dad. Oh, I mean, not to be whatever. We had Chrissy Todd Whitman was governor when I was middle school, I think, in high school, and then. We had somebody else in there, I forget. And then Chris Christie for 8 years. I got to meet Governor Christie and got to go to an event he did. He spoke at something that was not far from the church. And I said, I'm going to go. Sweet. That's pretty cool. And I think from that standpoint, you always know that in New Jersey, it's going to be 55 to 60% blue. You have your pockets, though. The area that I grew up in and then the area where we youth pastored for a bit tended to be conservative pockets. So your local stuff was more conservative, but you were an outlier in the state itself. And then coming to Ohio, I remember being like, I'm in a state that matters. Like I have to vote because like this state, Ohio with Bush and Kerry and Bush and Gore was a big deal. I mean, that was whoever won Ohio won the nation. I mean, that was the swing state. So I remember when we moved here in 2013, I'm like, babe, we're going to vote in a state that matters. Yeah. And I will tell you, in New Jersey, I did not experience the political ads like I do here. I remember it is around the clock. It is insane. And it was the first election we were here in Ohio versus New Jersey, we never saw political ads, few and far between. I mean, you see a handful, but it was like every commercial, every ad. When we got here, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then now with text message and everything in between, it's very, it's a lot. I know you were ready to chuck your phone out the window because you kept getting text messages like, give me $9 billion and
we'll match it by
I'll
1,000.
match it. Exactly. You have been approved for a 10 times match. You, just you.
If I wait another minute, you'll miss out, right?
Yeah. And
But I got a little mad and angry, and people were trying to reinforce, be kind to these people. They're just poll workers. But the more they said that, the more these things came in, and I couldn't find myself being able to be kind, because I started out saying remove me, and then I started using swears at people, and it just escalated. I just got rid of it.
Yeah. No, and the marketing and the advertising throughout the campaign is very interesting to watch. And being a marketer, some of it you have to enjoy if you can remove yourself from, hey, this is actually going to affect me, and then look at the marketing. Say what you want about Donald Trump, his personality, everything else. Homie sweats marketing.
He does.
And he brands everybody, sometimes to his own detriment.
Right.
But everybody has a nickname for a reason, and he repeats it ad nauseum because he labels those things. He labels those events. Everything that he does on a marketing standpoint, there's a reason his name's on all the buildings and everything else.
Can I tell you something, though?
Yeah.
Like, when I first started getting into business, like, all of my mentors were of the age of that era, right? And so all of the strategies were psychological strategies, and there was a lot of metrics and numbers. So like, one of the things are, if you're inking a deal, right? And if I can get the pen in your hand, you're 60% more likely to sign the deal if I can get the pen in your hand. So they used to like take a pen and they'd throw it at you to get a pen in your hand. And I'm thinking, that's the slimiest thing to do, but it works. And they would all do it. So anytime a salesperson nails you with the pen or tries to get you to hold it, that's their intention. They know a metric that makes you more likely to do something, and they work the crap out of you to get their way. But I hated that kind of stuff. I was like, I'm going to do business, and I'm just going to be honest. I'm not going to play all these little mental hacks on people to get my way. I'm just going to be forthcoming. Hey, do you want to do it? Cool. If not, that's cool too.
I feel like at least last election and probably the previous two, everybody was like, this is the election that will define us for forever. This is the election. If you don't vote, and every one of them is like, this is the last American election. Did you know today is the eve of the second Civil War? I've seen the memes, and it's almost like, for me as a pastor, it almost feels like the people that are always predicting like Jesus is coming back tomorrow, and then I'm like, well, he's still not here, but they do that because they want something from you. They're not doing that because necessarily they actually believe that or have some evidence to that. And it's so frustrating because both sides do it. And when their person's in, this is the error, this is what we want. But it's gotten so fear-based, particularly in these last two elections, where all of it is driven to, if you don't vote, like, America itself is going to dissolve into nothingness. We're going to be marched off into concentration camps. Yep. And it's absolutely insane. Now, my fear is that one time they're going to be right and nobody's going to listen because they've said it again and again and again.
That is the fear.
And I think at the end of this sort of election, everybody's praying for return to normalcy, right? I just don't see that coming. It doesn't matter what the results are. I think we're going to be far more polarized, far more tribal, and the divisions are going to continue. Yes?
Yeah, and we can try. People like you and I, after the fact, we have a good chance of like temporarily, pulling it together, because people are just worn out about it. But it won't take a whole lot to get people back on that path and push back the polarization, because somebody's going to lose and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to be butthurt about it, and they're not going to forget about it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So speaking of somebody winning and somebody losing, let's do a little prediction for tonight. We'll start with some of the maybe smaller races that affect us a little bit. So we have a kind of a big deal congressional race. So how long has Mahoning County been a Democratic held seat, our region, Ohio 13?
I think it's forever plus 10.
Plus 10.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Because Tim Ryan's held it for at least 18 years. And then prior to him was Trafficant.
Yeah.
And he was,
since I was a kid. So there were very few. Yeah.
So, now there's a Republican challenger. There is every time, but Christina Hagan seems to have some steam. She's very sharp. How do you think it's going to go? I know how we want it to go, but how do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I'm thinking that Tim's going to hang on to it. He's got a lot of support, and from, just pull the lever kind of type of Democrats. But I think what's going to happen is, because the challenge was so fierce, and she did a really good job campaigning, he got a little apathetic for the last couple of years. He got entrenched. He got some positions of power. He didn't have to do much to keep winning, and I think he took advantage of that. And I think this is going to motivate him to be a little bit more centrist, a little bit off of the fringe as he started to flirt with.
Yeah. Do you think there's a shot she upsets?
A little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit. I don't.
What would you put the percentages at?
I would say 60-40. It's probably the best, challenger that they've had. The last one was maybe, 30-70. So this one's a little bit better than that one.
Yeah, I'm certainly pulling for her, and
I'm telling you, I don't have anything against Tim Ryan.
Sure.
He's sort of in that same era of trafficking, where you watch the guy get on these committees, right? And he was able to claw back things to this area. Now, even though I don't agree with the philosophy of taking government money, but it's not like if he doesn't do it that they're going to just send it back, right? So if you're going to play that game, at least have a guy that's really good at pulling some back to this area. And I think he did quite a good job at doing it.
Yeah. Interesting. So that'll be close. Maybe one to watch, and maybe an interesting upset. Any other local stuff that you're like really
The only thing that jumped
in?
off the page at me this time was there was a ton of renewals for levies, and I wanted to ask you: Are you a yes levy person or a no levy person?
Yes. As a overall principle, taxation is theft. I hate taxes, period. Now, I know somebody's gonna be like, yeah, but they do good things. Yeah, but I can do good things with that money too. And I think people left up to their own devices will formulate fire departments, police departments. All of them were publicly or privately owned at one point. They started that way, and they only went public as government continued to take over those spots. And so, yes, I don't care for taxes in general. However, caveat, on a local front, like the renewal for the parks or the renewal for the schools and stuff like that, I want to have nice parks. I want to have nice schools for my kids to go to. On those sort of fronts, I tend to, yes, on the local taxes, they tend to be minimal in cost, and they tend to be a benefit to the community, family, property values, etc. So there's an advantage to doing it. However, second caveat, my concern is always, are they actually utilizing those funds in an efficient way? And most people really don't follow local politics to know whether or not they're being, like, you could tell me you need I don't know, what did they say, $18.45 for a $100,000 home. Boardman has a tax levy on there for the parks. It's a renewal. It's one that's been on there. I want to have nice parks. Sure, I'm going to do that. But did I sit down and look at, do they need that much money? Like, what are they putting that into? Are they overstaffed? Are people sitting around at the parks not doing anything, and we're just now paying them to do? Like, that's my question for that stuff. But I tend to be much more lenient on a local level than on a federal or state level, if that makes sense.
As long as your community sort of like makes the investment that does increase your property values. And if you look at Boardman's a good example of what they do with their school district and the parks and the property values. I think they do take it serious and do that investment. And I've never looked around and said they've been frivolous. Maybe road crews are should be doing a little bit better job, but that's more, more county than it is the city.
I think there was a county renewal on there as well.
But I do, when I read those through, I think, and I've been in communities that were just terrible financially. And, I lived in one city that was always in financial distress, and they were always had their hand out asking for money. And I just thought, if I give you money, you're just going to
waste it.
Yeah, you're going to be worse. And I was always a no there, but I feel Boardman's a pretty good town.
Yeah, I agree. We've been here 7 years and, love the parks, love the schools, like most everything that we've been a part of. I haven't been like, ooh, like what's going on there. Most of them like, oh wow, that's really nice. They did really well with that, or I really like the way that was done. And so, but like I said, I haven't investigated enough to say like, oh, I looked at the behind the scenes, and yeah, they're really getting the full bang for the buck type deal.
Right.
In that, but it seems to in a larger sense. So let's talk big races. So,
okay.
How do you feel the House and Senate are going to go tonight? Do you think they'll just go whichever way the presidential race goes, or do you think some of those down ballot races are going to kind of have a flavor of their own?
Yeah, I think that the House is going to add more Democratic seats.
Okay.
I think the Senate's going to be split, so I think you're going to lose 1 or 2 to Democrats. So it's going to be pretty even. And then I think it's going to the presidential
like 52-48 in the Senate, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then presidential, I think it's gonna be a lot like it was last time. So I feel like if it's not if it's not Trump, then it's a really tight loss. So
yeah. So you think either way on all of these, we're just gonna be cutting it right down the middle. You don't see a landslide one way or the other.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, not at all. And I think honestly, the one last time was not as close because I think Hillary was a lot more hated than Trump
she was a terrible candidate.
And I don't think Biden.
I registered as a Democrat to vote against her in the primary. Like that. I mean, just to put that in that, like people did not like Hillary Clinton. Period. Democrats did not like Hillary Clinton. I mean, Joe Biden's half dead,
right.
But at the end of the day, he's, what harm can he do? He's just a, doddering old guy, like, muttering around. And I think he's not
the trophy candidate.
No, not at all.
But he's not hated either. So
correct.
I think his unpopularity is.
He's a nice guy from all accounts, from what everybody says. He's a nice guy. I adamantly disagree with him on just about everything that comes out of his mouth, but I've heard he's a really nice guy. And, I don't know. I guess that counts for something.
There you go.
But that's going to be the difference. That's
why
the election
I feel
about.
like it's no more one way or the other. It's only that Biden is hated less than Hillary was, and that's what shores it up and makes it more even.
Yeah. So any particular states that you're watching? Do you feel like some states are they're close, but you really feel like they're going to fall one way or the other, either to Biden or to Trump?
I don't follow close enough. I mean, I look at my state, and that's the extent of it. How
do you think Ohio's going to go?
Oh, it's going to go to Trump.
Yeah, I agree.
No doubt. But, some of those other weird states that, like Michigan and Wisconsin, those are always ones that surprise me a little bit because I always feel that they're like blue. I
was shocked in 2016. Yeah.
Yep.
I woke my wife up at 1:30 after whatever time it was that they finally called it for Trump. I'm like, I can't believe he won.
Yeah.
I forget what it was, like New York Times, I think like 3 weeks out from the election, it was like 92% chance Hillary was going to win, 8% chance Donald Trump was going to win. And I recently saw something that was like 90% Joe Biden, 10% Donald Trump. And I'm like, we've all seen these numbers before.
Well, do you know why that is? I mean, I know they're going to be analyzing how the polling is so skewed.
Yeah.
And, because all of the metrics and the math are for traditional stuff. It's like almost like the Yankees and the Mets kind of thing. They put numbers to it and they put stats, but these candidates have not been traditional in any way whatsoever. And so I think you almost have to weight it in the other direction where you take traditional polls, but you have to weight the unconventional factor into those things. And I don't think they got a handle on it yet. So the polling can't
skewed.
do anything with it.
Yeah. Just like the last time. I read an article somewhere that said the reason the polls were so off the previous election and the reason they continue to be off is the silent majority you hear people say in terms of, the shy Trump voter and I will totally put this out there, but in 2016, I didn't say boo diddly who. People asked me who I was voting for, and I was like, I might be voting third party. In the back of my head, I'm like, I'm definitely voting Trump because I hate Hillary Clinton. But I didn't want anybody to know that.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to call it. Hey, Doug, this is Joe from Nielsen. You're not going to vote for Trump, are you?
Yeah.
No, of course not.
Of course not. And I think you have, I certainly have a level of that. I know a number of my friends, that are leading churches and clergy, and you have Democrats and Republicans, in your congregation, and you certainly don't want to alienate any one group. That's not why we're there. I certainly do my best to keep my politics out of the pulpit. But at the end of the day, I know a lot of those pastors are like, I can't say anything about what I'm doing with that. Like they're, and maybe it's fear, but it's almost like, I don't want to be categorized in that group because I happen to be pro-life, pro-Israel, pro-family, etc. Like
Right.
my values line up with
It's
the
who you
platform.
are. So I mean,
And so obviously I'm not going to vote in the other direction. I don't like the package. I wish the package was a little different and make it easier for me. But in 2016, I definitely felt the hesitation. I still feel that hesitation with a lot of my friends and colleagues and stuff that are just like, oh, I'm totally voting for him, but I will never say that publicly.
And you know what I notice about myself lately is that when you take some of those, principal topics where you feel passionate about and you see someone discussing it, I don't even feel like discussing it. I don't feel like jumping in because I'm not changing your mind and I'm getting all pissed off reading it. I'd rather not. I'll go do something else, right?
So you don't get on and you don't go to the WFMJ or whatever when they post those articles and you don't sit there and troll people.
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't. Maybe in a younger version of myself, I would have loved that, eating it up, get everybody riled up. But now I'd just prefer not to.
Yeah, I just grab popcorn and read. No, yeah, and I've gone back and forth with several of my friends in private messages and stuff like that. They'll post an article or make a comment throughout the election period, and for me, those exchanges are more about, hey, our relationship. I want to understand where you're coming from because I've known you for however long. I value and respect, kind of who you are and your thought process, and so maybe I'm missing something. So I like to have some of those exchanges because I think the moment I think that all of my stuff is 100% correct, like I'm in trouble. Like if I'm not willing to come to the table and learn and glean and ask those questions, I may be pretty resolved in my position, but someone comes along and presents new information, I have to sit and I can't just write it off. I have to sit down and go, all right, there's new evidence here. How does that affect this position or that position or my thoughts on, X or Y?
The political game will just suck you in, and you want to be all practical and helpful, and it'll just suck you in, I
do. And I maybe I would be a terrible candidate if I ever ran for office because I'm very pragmatic, and I want to cut the baby in. I want to cut the baby in half, for lack of a better term. Like I want to find the solution where everybody goes, we're all in. And I know that that's not possible because everybody has their teams and all that. So you think it's going to be real narrow, narrow in the Senate, narrow in the in the House. You're saying Dems are going to pick up a few more.
That's a for sure.
Yeah, you think so?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think there's going to be a few. I actually think the House is probably going to stay fairly steady. I don't think either one's going to pick up a ton. There are a few spots where I could see conservatives picking up a few seats, but for the most part, I think we're going to the House is probably going to stay pretty well the same, which I just hope they replace Nancy Pelosi.
Now, do you think, and the reason I'm going to tell you why I think it's going to be close, I believe in the pendulum swing of politics, right? Mm-hmm. Leading into this, if Republicans had a bunch of victories going in or failures going into it, then people will be motivated for another crack at it. But there's been quite a bit of things that got accomplished. And there's some stuff that all right, I'm doing this because, you know what I mean? You're not going to be mad in that moment. You're going to say oh, it's been great, pretty good so far. Let's do a little bit more of that. Yeah. Less motivated than people would vote against and saying, hey, I hate everything about everything. They get to the polls. Yeah. That's what skews it, I think.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to watch the marketing game of both sides, and the Dems have made this 100% about Donald Trump's personality. You couldn't tell me a policy that Joe Biden stands for.
I know.
Right. I don't think there's anybody, he might do this, he might do that. He doesn't have to answer any hard questions. The media just carries around a drool cup for him and stuff like that, and is just so excited that he's not Donald Trump.
Well, but that's hard because he's old guard, right? And the party has shifted so much towards that element that he's just not. He's never been that way. He's actually been a pretty moderate guy for most of what I've known about him. And so to be thrust where you got a lot of people around you that are super progressive. I mean, you can't take a stand because everything you would say sounds more like the Republican position than the Democrat position. It'd be a rough spot.
Well, and I think, and where we'll kind of go to land the plane on the show, I think I think that's going to be the interesting thing. I think regardless of how the election goes, I think you have a battle inside the Democratic Party, and you're either going to have a progressive party and a moderate party that come out of this, because I don't see the moderates just continuing to go further left, even though the left would like to continue to push them there. In many cases, it's pushed some of them into the Republican camp. I think some of them have voted for Donald Trump for that reason, but then you also have within the Republican Party people that don't like Trump's personality. Arguably, he's been one of the most conservative presidents in my lifetime. I mean, I was born in 85. I mean, Reagan was president for 5 years at that point. But the truth is, I think the Republicans, if Trump loses, they'll say, well, it's his personality, and they're all pretty resolved around the platform, if that makes sense. I don't think there's maybe a little more fiscal. We probably have some fiscal conservatives that'll be, hey, we need to rein in the spending. But other than that, I mean, what he did in foreign policy, what he's done, like all of that has been textbook. But as far as the left goes, you have a real left wing to that party, and a real moderate space in that party, and at some point there's going to have to be a fracture, because
if they lose and they add the responsibility because they went too progressive, then that gets cast out. You don't think it'll?
No,
they'll blame honest evaluation.
No, they didn't last time. Last time it was Russia.
That's true. And
we spent $48 million to find out it wasn't Russia. I mean, in all fairness, everything that Mueller brought to the table was we'd have no proof of collusion, any of that stuff. $48 million to find out that, the Obama administration and the FISA warrant and all that stuff originated there, and was nothing. It was a big giant.
I got y'all fired up. Let me see if I can prod this one a little bit more.
But I think when you look at where the left is, I think Biden loses this election, they'll blame Biden.
Okay.
And they'll say, well, he was the old guard. We need somebody new. We need fresh vision. And they're going to go to the left. And you're going to have an AOC, or you're going to have somebody way, way out there on the fringe that they're going to try and crown as the future of the party. And I just think you're going to leave behind, like they did in Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan last election. You're going to leave behind these, what did Obama call them? The bitter clingers to their Bibles and their guns, the deplorables, as Hillary called them. Biden's now called them chumps. You have these people in the middle of the country that just aren't, they're liberal in the classical sense, but they're not progressive. And so when the further the party goes to the left, you're going to have these people that don't have a home. They don't have a party.
I'll start a new party for them.
And
I'll welcome him in.
I think a 3-party system or a 4-party system would be very fascinating. I know technically the libertarians run a candidate each time, but it's kind of like, wow. But I would love to see a more dynamic debate, because I think there's more than just Pepsi and Coke out there.
Yeah.
And
join the Joe's Whig Party.
The Whig Party. We'll bring back the Tories. So that was going to be my next question. Did I
ruin your next question with a joke? I'm so sorry.
No, it's wonderful.
When I do that.
You were feisty in the beginning, but then I got feisty towards the end. Trump wins. What happens? Is there going to be unrest in the streets? Is he going to jump, right in? Do you think he announces that he wins tonight, even if it's close? Like, what do you see playing out the next 48 hours, next month, et cetera, as Trump kind of, if he wins, and then we'll do the same question for Biden.
I think there's some mild chaos no matter what. I think Loki's just going to poke people in the eye everywhere that there is.
Well, businesses are boarding up, all the major cities and stuff like that. The Republicans aren't showing up to protest. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to be the far left who's been burning cities down for the whole summer.
Yeah. So there will be a contingent that just will not be able to, I'm not going to say accept it. I mean, they'll accept it, but they're not going to be happy and just join back into normal life again. They're going to show their disdain for it.
Yeah. I think we'll have some of that. I think if Trump wins, I think it'll be interesting. It'll depend how aggressive he is. Will depend on what happens down ballot. Whether the Senate is firmly red. I think if he wins, I think the Republicans have a better shot at picking up more seats in the House and certainly holding a greater majority in the Senate. If he loses, I think that both of those go much closer. So if Biden wins, what happens?
I think nothing, honestly.
Okay.
And as a libertarian,
Yeah.
I want gridlock. Like I want there to be like, how can we construct this so nobody gets out of their way at all, no matter what happens? And, if you foresee that Trump wins, but then the Congress is locked up, that's a cool thing. And vice versa. I think Biden wins, though. There's a huge power shift. And, because he's got half the branch and Senate will be close enough to be, it's a little bit scarier in that deal, because that's way too much consolidated power.
And some of the stuff that they're talking about doing, is just going to town on our structure and system and stuff like that, adding states. And I know some of those things are larger than the pundits are making them. It's not like they can do some of these things kind of willy-nilly. Like there are pieces, those are big chess moves. Those are not things they're just going to wake up tomorrow and go, oh, by the way, we're going to do it. Now they could end the Senate filibuster. That's something they could do. But, packing the Supreme Court, some of those things, there's steps in between. They just can't wake up and do that one day. There's certain things that have to happen. But I know that that's a concern for a lot of conservatives is, that Biden's going to, that he's a Trojan horse has been the way that the pundits have put it, is that he makes the old guard liberals go, oh, good old Joe, and we're going to vote with him, and that he's going to push in. Do you think he makes it through 4 years if he wins?
No, not a chance. I don't.
Ben Shapiro says that he needs to get a food taster. he said because Kamala Harris is going to be on the sidelines waiting. Right? Yeah. He's just got to make it to January 20th.
Yeah. I don't know how that goes down, but I think this has been orchestrated from the very get-go, that there's been a succession of power between that because, anyway.
Yeah, I think that Biden-Harris win, he's going to have to push a left agenda, and the moment he bucks anything, they're going to go, that's fine. She was the most liberal senator in the Senate. So either way, I think it's going to be very interesting. Either way, I think we live in the greatest country in the world. Either way,
we will survive it.
We will survive. And either way, I will still be friends with people who vote for different people. I think some of this cancel culture stuff drives me nuts where it's like, oh, you voted for them, I'm never speaking to you again. I'm like, what are we, 2? You took your ball and went home? Like,
are you hemorrhaging friends on Facebook? Is that where that comes from?
Oh, I don't know. Should I look? Maybe after this I will. Don't look. Maybe after this I will. But no, I at the end of the day, for me, I'm doing my best to do my part civically, to vote as I feel kind of line up with biblical values, and ultimately for me, my trust is that somebody greater than me sits on the throne of heaven, and the hope of the world doesn't live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Way much pressure gone off of your shoulders, right?
Would I be very excited to have some things go the way that I think would be best and, be good for my kids or whatever? Absolutely. But if they don't, I'm going to wake up Wednesday and go to work.
See, if that happens, we're all good, right? No matter what happens.
If Biden wins, I'm going to go to work. If Trump wins, I'm going to go to work. My son has a birthday party coming up. We're going to have that. Well, we may have more lockdowns, which is a different conversation that we could get into. If Biden wins, he's talking about a, national mask mandate and lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. But whatever.
I'll just be crying in the parking lot, rolling around, not being able to conduct myself. You got to come console me.
No, yeah, genuinely. I'm just excited for the political ads stand, to be honest with you. I can't wait to turn on YouTube or Netflix or whatever and have the political ads just stop. So
at the final year for Obama, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, listen, I know what we want to do. Let's get rid of all this venom that's going on. Let's let him serve out this last thing. Let's try to make nice with the other side, no matter what. And I'm telling you, the insistence that there be a battle or a fight was off the charts. I don't understand it. Yeah. Like now, when you have the potentiality for peace and potentiality to remove some of that stuff, and nobody will take you up on it. It's not a marketable thing right now.
So was Trump your candidate in 2015, 2016? In the primary, who was your candidate?
Oh, that's a good question.
Who were you polling for?
Yeah,
who was Rubio? You had Cruz. You had Chris Christie was in that mix. You had Ben Carson. I loved Ben.
Ben was my
loved
guy.
Ben Carson.
Ben was my
I
guy.
knew he didn't have a snowball's chance to win the nomination.
But he was so calm.
He's
so
wonderful.
smart.
And he's been, he had all the things that would make a great president, but just not get elected. I mean, he would do a great job, but he's just not electable because he doesn't have the personality to carry it. In that sense, I liked him. I was a Ted Cruz fan. I like Ted Cruz. He reminded me of a good Baptist evangelist. He's the son of a Baptist evangelist. So kind of his cadence when he talked, I'm like, I'm sitting in a sermon. I kind of like this. I think it'd be fascinating if Trump does win and gets to nominate another Supreme Court justice, if he nominated somebody like Ted Cruz. I think that'd be fascinating. It'd be interesting to see how the Senate would go with that. I don't know. It'd be...
Welcome to the 60th state and 92 senators.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. Anyway, we live in the greatest country in the world. And the fact is, if you haven't voted yet, voting is still open. You should go and exercise your right, whether you're voting for Trump or Biden, or whether you're voting for Tim Ryan in our area, or Christina, right? Hagan. And,
I'm going to go vote again after this.
And Wednesday, the earth will still spin, the sun will still rise, and the moon will still be up. So don't lose your stuff. Try not to burn anything down, and let's just do our best to whoever's going to be president. I will pray for them, and whoever's going to be in office. I think it's important for us to find those things that we can agree on and can move forward on, and move forward on those things. So
well said.
We'll see you Thursday.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about us.